Bonjour! Today we're going to learn about phenomenal verbs, and there are three groups of them: reflexive, idiomatic, and reciprocal. Basically, you don't really need to know these three words. You just need to know how to use them, and the good thing is they all work the same way. Now, our phenomenal verbs use reflexive pronouns, which are me, te, se, nous, vous, ce. And you've already seen this before. You already know how to use them. And the first group is reflexive. An example of that, which you've learned in French 1, is je m'appelle. Pretty simple. The way that reflexive verbs work is that there's a subject. The subject is performing an action, calling in this case, and the action is happening back onto the subject itself. So I call myself. That's what it means literally. It's just like Spanish, yo me llamo, I call myself. Same thing in French. Some things to watch out for is that this here ends in an E because that is what you do in the first person singular for the ER verbs. First person singular, that's je. So the verb is conjugated according to the subject. The reflexive pronoun that you choose is the same according to the subject. Again, that's why it's the first person singular. Let's look at another reflexive verb. Je me brosse les dents. I brush my teeth. Some things to watch out for here. Even though we have les dents, the teeth are not what are doing the action. The brushing is happening to them, but they're not the ones that are brushing. So that means the verb here, I brush needs to be conjugated in a first person singular. Basically it needs to go with je, I brush. We need the me because that's first person singular as well. And the brushing is happening back onto I, but it just so happens that specifically we're talking about I am brushing the teeth. I said the teeth, even though in English we say I am brushing my teeth. When you use a reflexive pronoun, we're not going to say I'm brushing my teeth, and using a possessive, we're going to use the definite article here, like les or le or la. So I brush the teeth. Next, let's look at how to make it negative. So negative, that's really not too tricky. You put the ne before the reflexive pronoun and the pas after the verb. Je ne me brosse pas les dents. So there's a lot of places where we can put ne and pas and get confused, but just make sure you put the ne before the reflexive pronoun, the pas after the verb. So let's look at another example of this when we have to conjugate the verb differently. We'll say les enfants se brossent les dents. So, les enfants, this is plural, so our verb is third person plural. Also, our subject, les enfants, is third person plural, third person, so we use se for a reflexive pronoun. Teeth, we're still using our definite article. Now, if we were going to say children don't brush their teeth, then we're going to put ne before our reflexive pronoun, and after the verb, we're going to put pas. Les enfants ne se brossent pas les dents. Let's move on to idiomatic. Basically, idiomatic just means an idiom, an expression. So an example of that is, just go around here, is je me souviens. I remember. So literally you could say I remember to myself. I remember myself. It doesn't really make sense, but it's just an expression, it's just an idiom. Our next group are the reciprocal verbs, which is expressing an action that is reciprocal. It's happening back and forth between two or more people. So, an example, love each other. They hate each other. We are talking to each other. So, the verb is conjugated according to what the subject is. This is third person plural, so this has to be third person plural. Here again, third person plural. Same thing here, here, and here. Nu, first person plural, so we need to use the first person plural reflexive pronoun. And parlons, this goes again with our subject. Nu. Make sure they all match just like they're supposed to. Let's look at the negative again. Remember the negative goes here. Nu. Here and here. Nu. I'll put the arrow. Ne. Nous parlons pas. I wanted to bring this one out and emphasize this because it sounds weird. But if you remember that the ne goes before the reflexive pronoun and the pas goes after the verb, it won't be that tricky. But listen to it. Nous parlons pas. So we got a couple of nous in there, and that's what sounds a little tricky. Again, ne goes before a reflexive pronoun. And it acts the same as the reflexive verbs. The idiomatic, the reciprocal, the reflexive, they're all in the pronominal verb group. They all work similarly. Now the next thing that we should look at is giving a command or saying an imperative statement, like you do something, when it's using a pronominal verb. So let's look at this phrase. You are hurrying up. Here we're just stating it. You are hurrying. Now we're going to tell someone, hurry up. You hurry up. We're going to take off the subject pronoun. We're going to move the reflexive pronoun to the right side of the verb. And then we need to make sure that the verb is in the imperative form. Now for ER verbs, that means we just need to take off the S. We're going to change to toi. Dépêche-toi. Hurry up. Let's look at it in the vous form. If we're talking to a group of people, vous dépêchez. There we go. We take off the subject pronoun. We move the reflexive pronoun to the right side of the verb, and we have dépêchez-vous. Hurry up. Okay? And that's how it works. Again, all three groups work the same way. You don't need to tell me whether it's reflexive, idiomatic, or reciprocal. You need to just make sure that you use the correct reflexive pronoun and you conjugate the verb correctly as usual.